I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
Let's take a look back at Flash Gordon, a movie I've seen more times than it is probably wise to admit to, which is a 1980 space opera film directed by Mike Hodges and produced by Dino De Laurentiis. We follow football star Flash Gordon, played by Sam Jones, and travel agent Dale Arden, played by Melody Anderson, as they help Dr. Hans Zarkov, played by Topol, as they try to stop the unnatural disasters and strange hot hail afflicting Earth being sent from planet Mongo, where the despot Ming the Merciless, played by Max von Sydow, is attacking Earth out of pure boredom. With the help of a race of Hawkmen, Flash and the gang struggle to save Earth. It is of course a comic book movie adaptation of the King Features comic strip of the same name, which was first published January 7th, 1934, created and originally drawn by Alex Raymond. The strip was originally created to compete with the popular Buck Rogers Adventure strip. It was far from the first adaptation of the property either, with there being 3 earlier films based on the comic strip, all starring Buster Crabbe. Flash Gordon in 1936, Flash Gordon's Trip to Mars in 1938, and Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe in 1940. There have also been numerous TV adaptations, starting with the 1954 series called Flash Gordon and ending in 2007 series also called Flash Gordon that ran on the Sci-Fi Channel. Which brings us to the 1980 adaptation produced by Dino De Laurentiis, who was an Italian-American producer who introduced Italian cinema to the world after the Second World War. He produced over 500 films over his lifetime, with 38 being nominated for Academy Awards. Rather famously, George Lucas wanted to adapt the comic book in the 1970s into film, but frustrated at not being able to acquire the rights from De Laurentiis, he went and made his own original space opera instead, which was a little known film called Star Wars. De Laurentiis had a very particular style for the film in mind, wanting a campy comic book TV serial feel similar to the 1960s Batman TV series. In the end, he brought in his collaborator on King Kong, Lorenzo Semple, as screenwriter, as he had actually developed that series. Semple has said about the movie, "Dino wanted to make Flash Gordon humorous. At the time I thought that was a possible way to go, but in hindsight I realised it was a terrible mistake. We kept fiddling around with the script, trying to decide whether to be funny or realistic. That was a catastrophic thing to do. With so much money involved, I never thought the character Flash in the script was particularly good. But there was no pressure to make it any better. Dino had a vision of a comic strip character treated in a comic style. That was silly because Flash Gordon was never intended to be funny. The entire film got way out of control." Although I disagree that it was a mistake to make the movie a campy comedy, he isn't wrong that the film got way out of control, as we are about to find out. De Laurentiis attempted to get various directors to adapt the comics before settling on Mike Hodges. Firstly, he tried Italian director Federico Fellini. Although he optioned the rights to the film, he never went ahead with the project for some reason. Next he tried Nicholas Roeg, but after a year of pre-production, De Laurentiis was dissatisfied with his treatment of the property, which he thought was far too serious, so instead attempted to tempt Sergio Leone to direct. Leone refused the offer because he didn't think the adaptation was faithful enough to the Raymond comic strips. I would pay good money to see a spaghetti western version of this though. Which brings us to the eventual director Mike Hodges, who was actually being tapped to direct a potential sequel. De Laurentiis was so convinced Flash Gordon would be a huge hit at this point, he'd signed everyone on to a 3-picture deal. With Hodges telling Den of Geek in July 2020, I told him, "Look, I'm completely the wrong director." With everyone else either passing on the opportunity or already having fallen out with De Laurentiis, he decided to abandon plans to have Hodges direct a sequel and attempted to convince him to direct the opening film. Hodges stated, "After De Laurentiis and Nick Roeg fell out, He pursued me, and I could never really work out why. I think he felt, well, if I resisted so much what Nick was doing, because I didn't understand it actually, then maybe I was the right director, so he convinced me to do it. The film was filmed in the UK at Elstree and Shepperton Studios and on location in Scotland. Production was not easy, however, with Hodges having very little control over proceedings, with De Laurentiis having hired the Italian production designer Dino De Laurentiis, who, according to Hodges, wanted to make it an Italian surrealist sort of film. I was in a sense outside of the circle in many ways. Danilo had taken off on his own, and wonderful designer as he was, I was never quite sure whether he'd even read the script. Added to this were problems with the star of the film, Sam Jones, who allegedly beat out Harvey Keitel, Jeff Bridges, Kurt Russell and Arnie to the role of a lifetime for the rookie actor and former Playgirl centerfold. Although he looked picture perfect for the role, he was a seemingly troubled individual underneath his muscular frame and bottle blonde locks. After arriving in London to start filming, he started fights, turned up late on set and would regularly demand payment from De Laurentiis before he would start that day's shoot. After shooting Wrapped, he was essentially kicked off the film and not invited back for reshoots and dialogue recording sessions, and essentially had large parts of his vocal performance replaced by a stand-in voice actor. As Hodges said in that July 2020 interview, I basically had to survive by seeing what they gave me to work with. So it will come as no surprise to any of you when I say that Flash Gordon was, wait a minute, it was what? A box office and critical success, grossing more than double its budget of $20 million, making $27.1 million in North America and a very impressive additional £14 million in the UK, plus performing well in Italy. Critical response was also largely positive, with Roger Ebert giving one of the more positive reviews of the film, saying, "Flash Gordon is played for laughs, and wisely so. This is space opera. It's fun to see it done with energy and love, and without the pseudo-meaningful apparatus of the Force and Trekkie power. Is it fun? Yeah, sort of it is." For the second week in a row, I find myself in full agreement with Roger Ebert. This movie is just amazingly fun, and I love it. The movie has also gone on to become a cult classic through home video and television broadcasts, being a favourite and inspiration for such directors as Edgar Wright, and is, according to Brian Blessed, Her Majesty the Queen's favourite film. Queen the rock band, of course, did the soundtrack. Only 2 tracks feature lyrics, with one of these, Flash's theme, being the only single released from the album as Flash. The album reached number 10 in the UK and number 23 in the US. Flash's theme is probably the greatest movie theme of all time. I don't think it can be topped personally. Queen actually went on to do future look back at material Highlander's soundtrack in 1986, the only 2 soundtracks they produced. 2 sequels were planned initially, but due to the fact Jones was persona non grata with De Laurentiis after the first film, and the somewhat lower than expected box office gross in North America that caused, they never materialised. A reboot has been stuck in development hell since 2015, however.
Will it make me forget? No, but it will make you not mind remembering.
As I said at the very beginning of this video, I have seen this film way more times than I should really admit to, and yet I happily watched it again for this look back at. It's everything about 80s films that appeal to me, when the auteur filmmakers of the 70s were given big budgets and freedom to make the movies they wanted. It's a kind of film that will never get made again due to tight studio control over every aspect of the film. The production issues that make it a weird hodgepodge of the camp absurdity of the 1950s and 1960s TV serials, of Italian surrealist set and costume design, strangely modern comic book origin story, and comedy are exactly what make it amazing. Dale Arden's costume and set design are, even now 40 years later, stunning. Every scene is like a riotous surrealist painting. You could see this film 1,000 times and still notice new details in the costumes or set. The cast is exceptional, from Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless, which, let's be honest, is a casting choice that would never get made now because Twitter would lose its collective brain cell, to Ornella Muti, who just oozes sensual sex appeal as Princess Aura, via Timothy Dalton as Prince Barin, to Brian Blessed doing a star turn as Prince Vultan. I'd honestly watch paint dry if Brian Blessed narrated it. He's a legitimate national treasure. Even the iconic football fight scene in the throne room wasn't originally in the script, and was an addition due to the fact they just made things up as they were going. As soon as Jones saw the eggs one of the alien races were holding in Ming's throne room, he instantly said that maybe he should use those in a fight as they resembled footballs, and surely Flash, a footballer, would use that experience, with Hodge saying it was a fight that was in a sense meant to be taken seriously, but I found it totally impossible because of the story itself. I decided that it had to be comedic and fun, and so that's what we ended up with. And that's exactly what we got, a riotous hour and 50 minutes of fun. So that was Flash Gordon, a riotous mix of the absurd Italian surrealism, modern comic book movie and comedy, all with that amazing Queen soundtrack pumping above it, that makes it stand out in the pantheon of comic book adaptations as something unique, and probably the only thing me and Her Majesty the Queen have in common, in that it's for both of us one of our favourite movies. Next month it is Halloween, so I'm doing Horrorween, because I am an absolute hack. First up is Neon Maniacs, because I think it's an underappreciated film in actual need of a reboot, followed by Suspiria, 1977 Argento classic, where the remake is shock horror, maybe even better than the original. Then Phantasm 2, which is a viewer request, and finally Event Horizon, a film I've never been able to sit the entire way through because it freaks me out too much. So if you want to see any of those, subscribe so you don't miss them.